Hey, what's up, everybody? Back with another cardboard kitchen video. I know it's been a while since my last video. Life happens. What else can you say? Life happens. See what has happened since my last video. Lore One Equips has come out since my last video. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff has come out since my last video, and we are getting ready to hit the next Strixhaven set, Secrets of Strixhaven, whatever it is pre-release starting. Technically, it's starting now. I'm recording this video on 4/18, so it technically would have started last night. It runs through this coming Thursday, 17, 7, 24, 23 through the 23rd of April. So 17th through the 23rd of April. If you didn't already know that. Wherever you are, good morning, good night, good afternoon, whatever the case is. If you're looking to participate in any of the Strixhaven's pre-release events, look at your local game store if you can, depending on what area you're in. I'm in an area that's got 3 or 4 different local game stores. One of them is doing an event tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have to work, so I'm going to miss that event. Another one is doing an event in my area, is doing an event, I believe it's Wednesday. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to miss that event too, because of the fact that I have to work early Thursday morning, so I'm not going to be able to stick around because their event's not starting till like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. So I can't stay out till like 11 p.m. unfortunately. That being said, I did look over some of the Strixhaven stuff. I haven't dived into the set heavily like a lot of other people probably have. I used to look at spoilers extensively way back in the day. Like I said, I've mentioned before on the podcast. I've been playing since the year 2000, so that's 26 years. So I used to look at spoilers very extensively, but ever since the rise of Universes Beyond and all that, I'm not going to bore you with my irritating details of that, but ever since the rise of the Universes Beyond stuff, I don't, even if it's a MTG universe related set, I'm at the point where I don't look heavily into the spoilers. I was super excited about Lorwyn Eclipsed, and I didn't look heavily into the spoilers for Lorwyn, primarily because I really wanted to be surprised by that set, and I was very surprised by that set. That being said, since Strixhaven pre-release is underway, and all those fun little things are happening, I wanted to do a quick video talking about, we're doing lessons. Strixhaven, it's college. We're back at the college. We've got lesson spells. I particularly wanted to do a little discussion real quick in this video about one of my favorite mechanics that was originally seen in the original Kamigawa block. It's been a hot minute. It's an ability called Epic. The Epic ability states, as this spell resolves, you exile this particular spell. For the rest of the game, you can cast no spells whatsoever. However, at the beginning of your upkeep, at the beginning of each of your upkeeps, you create a copy of this spell and do that spell. You don't necessarily cast it, but you create a copy of the spell on the stack and, do as it says. There's one epic spell in each color. They all do something a little different. The white one lets you search for an enchantment and put it into play. You search your deck specifically for an enchantment and put it into play. The black one forces somebody to, it's either mill or discard cards based on the number of cards in your hand. The green one gives you 1/1 colorless creature tokens based on the number of cards in your hand. The blue one lets you search an opponent's library for, I believe it's an artifact, a creature, or a land, and put it into play under your control. And the red one does something else that I'm not fully aware of, just because I don't play the red one at all. Um, and the reason I want to bring that up is because the epic ability says you can't cast spells for the rest of the game, but you also get a copy of this spell at the beginning of each of your upkeeps. The reason I think this is relevant to Strixhaven is because we have new spells with the ability called Paradigm. So the Paradigm ability states that as the spell resolves, you exile this spell, and then for the rest of the game, you at the beginning of your first main phase, you cast a copy of this spell from exile, and they've got one for each color. They all do something kind of different. The white one is you get to return any non-land permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. The green one is you put 2+1/+1 counters on each creature you control. I forget what the blue one does. The black one says target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. And the red one says you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a total mana value of 4 CMC or greater, and then you get to cast those spells. You can't get lands off of it, but you get to cast any of those spells that you hit. What makes Paradigm interesting is that even though it does half of what the old epic ability does, where it exiles itself and then you get a copy of it, granted you get a copy of it at the beginning of your first main phase instead of your upkeep. The epic ability was during your upkeep. The other good news about the Paradigm ability is that Paradigm does not prevent you from casting spells further into the game. If you resolve a Paradigm spell, it's just basically a bonus benefit further along into the game, because you can still cast spells for the remainder of the game. What I find interesting about each of the Paradigm spells is every spell with Paradigm in Strixhaven is a lesson. Every single one of them is instant sorcery lesson. It's either an instant or it's a sorcery, but it's a lesson. The reason I find this funny is because when we went to the Avatar universe, we got good old Uncle Iroh, who says your lesson spells have flashback for 1 generic. So I just kind of wanted to ramble on a little bit here. I really feel like most anybody who was looking at lessons or looking at going back to Strixhaven with an Uncle Iroh deck was going to be super excited about it. I personally don't know if they could have pushed for better mechanics for Strixhaven, but I am a huge advocate for the fact that they did in fact produce Paradigm spells, which is a callback to the old epic ability, and then they made those spells lessons. I think they would be in any deck that's going to play the Paradigm spells, they are a chunk of mana. They're 4, 5, 6, 7 mana to play. So they're mana intensive. So in any deck that you would play them in that's not Uncle Iroh, they're going to be expensive spells, but they've got decent payoffs. In the Uncle Iroh deck, what makes this fantastic with the fact that they're lessons is that now you don't have to cast them from your hand. You can cast them from your graveyard with Uncle Iroh in play for 1 generic mana. And if you have an Uncle Iroh deck, you also know that you can reduce that cost because it's a 1 generic. You can reduce that by playing things that say reduce the cost of your instants or sorceries by 1 generic mana. So the goal would be in an Iroh deck, depending on which of the Paradigm spells you wanted to play, the initial goal would be ramp to Iroh. Once you're at Iroh, play some instants or sorceries or even lesson spells that are going to let you get your Paradigm spells into your graveyard, and then also have a creature in play to reduce your flashback cost, and then just Paradigm from your graveyard. Cast a Paradigm spell from your graveyard for free because it's a lesson. And to me, that sounds really cool. Um, I don't know about the green one. Like, you're probably not playing a ton of creatures in Uncle Iroh to begin with. So the green one giving 2+1/+1 counters to each creature you control, probably not amazing on its own. However, that being said, um, something that I do find fun that you could do, you don't have to. You don't have to, but you can. Something that I find fun that you could do is obviously try to build your deck so that you don't lose to mill, so that you can recycle your graveyard back into your deck as needed. Um, I play in a play group where almost every play group plays the what is well known as the Shuffle Titans. Basically, you play something that's going to let you abuse your Shuffle Titans to be able to have them hit the graveyard and reshuffle your entire graveyard. I know it's janky. The combination of Shuffle Titans plus your abilities to abuse them usually takes up 4 or 5 dedicated slots in a deck. So that's 4 or 5 fewer pieces you could have towards your actual goal of what you want the deck to do. But I've found in a lot of cases since I've started playing them, it's useful. Like, you don't just auto lose to decks that want to use like Mesmeric Orb or Flat Mill or whatever the blue black god is, where you get to mill based on their toughness. Um, yes, those decks are janky, and those kinds of decks are huge feel bads when you lose to them. I will agree to that. Um, I'm not a fan of those decks. I'm not a fan of playing against those decks. I'm not a fan of losing to those decks, but I will also stipulate I'm not a fan of consistently playing shuffled, 4 or 5 cards to include Shuffle Titans and ways to either go get them or ditch them, just to get the reshuffle effect. It's it's half a dozen one, 12,000 the other, whatever that phrase is. However, in Uncle Iroh, obviously we want to ramp out to Iroh as fast as possible with a cost reducer in play. And then we want to play lesson spells that like draw us and then force us to ditch, or we ditch first and then draw, whatever the case might be. And then flashback paradigm spells from our graveyard for free. The red one could be good depending on how you build the deck. I would not include any X spells in the deck just because X is 0 anywhere other than the stack, but you have to pay mana into X. So if you're getting to cast a spell for free, X will always be 0. Just because you can't, by using the effect that lets you play it for free, you cannot then decide to put mana into it. It would just always be X. So I do not recommend casting X spells. That being said, an additional follow-up would be, once you've run your cycle of stuff you want to do and you're like recycling your Uncle Iroh deck, you could also choose to include something like Hive Mind. Hive Mind's a blue enchantment. It's 6 mana, it's 5 and a blue. 5 generic and a blue. It's an enchantment that states whenever any player casts an instant or sorcery spell, each other player gets a copy of that spell and may choose new targets for their copy. So basically, Hive Mind in play, whoever cast an instant or sorcery, everybody gets a copy, and you resolve them in reverse turn order. So that can be fun, but what makes it fun is then I've probably mentioned this combination beforehand, but what would make it fun at that point is if you cast one of the old epic spells. So if you have Hive Mind in play, you've already got your paradigm spells that are going to set. They're going to go off on each of your main phases. And you've already got those. They're in the yard, or they're in exile rather, because you don't want your opponents getting your paradigm spells, because those are actually, in my personal opinion, the paradigm spells for the most part are better than the epic spells. They're slightly cheaper. They don't do as as much of a boom effect, um, but they also don't force you to not play anything the rest of the game. So, obviously, ramp Iroh, get your paradigm spells into your yard, flash them back for 0, have Hive Mind in play, have a cost reducer, multiple cost reducers if possible in play to make this more likely to happen. And then once you've got all that going on, then you do one of your epic spells. I don't recommend the blue one, because if you play the blue epic spell and each of your opponents gets a copy that resolves, they get to steal stuff from your deck. I was about to say a bad word, but whatever. We don't want them stealing stuff from our deck. So I would recommend the red one and the green one. Do not include the blue one. The recommendation, you don't have to take my recommendation, but that's my recommendation. And what makes this fun, I'm using air quotes in case you're strictly listening and not paying attention. What makes this fun is the way all those spells are going to interact is we're probably going to have a better benefit of using those spells than our opponents are. More than likely, once the epic spells resolve, more than likely we've essentially hard shut every opponent down. And the reason I say hard shut our opponents down is because there's no guarantee that they are going to be able to benefit heavily enough from the epic spells resolutions. The green one gives you 1/1 colorless creatures that equal to the number of cards in your hand. That's the only one where if you had Hive Mind and maybe you have fewer cards in hand than your opponents, that's the only one where that might be a problem. But if we've also already resolved our green paradigm spell, what's going to happen is we're going to get our however many 1/1 tokens, and then all of those 1/1 tokens later in that turn are going to get 2 +1/+1 counters. We might not necessarily have the same number of creatures coming into play off of the green epic spell, but we will have bigger creatures because our opponents aren't going to have the way we want to do this. We want to do it in such a manner that our opponents won't have the ability to get any benefit from our paradigm effects. So that is essentially the goal. Once we've done the Hive Mind into one of the epic spells and our opponents have an epic spell resolve, they are bound by the epic resolution ruling. They also can no longer cast spells for the rest of the game. So whatever epic spell resolves, that's what they're stuck doing the rest of the game, depending on what it is. In Uncle Iroh, that's red, blue, and green. If we do not include the blue epic spell, that leaves red and or green. The reason I say and or green, because what could be fun, what could be awesome, if you have the mana for it and if you have the setup, is to have the ability to cast your epic spells at instant speed. So if you have Hive Mind in play and just leave up enough mana to be able to play your epic spells at instant speed, and then say at the end of the player's turn, whose turn it would be before you go. So like if you sit in a pot of 4, not the person to your left, but the person to your right, at the end of their turn, flash your epic spells. So then you get your epic spells then. You get the resolution of your epic spells then. Your opponents get the resolution of those epic spells as well. And if they don't have a way to interact, they are also going to be forced to cast no more spells for the remainder of the game. Then it goes to your turn, so during your upkeep, your epic spells will do their trigger, resolve again. Then you draw your card for your turn, you go to your first main phase, which will trigger your paradigm ability, and then give you your paradigm effects. If we do the epic spells after we do paradigms, the red paradigm is not going to be beneficial. because the red paradigm lets us cast more stuff. And because we can't cast anything, it's basically just dig 4 or dig X until we hit CMC 4 or more in total, and then those cards I think go on the bottom in a random order. But yeah, like that would be essentially the Holy Grail. Now that would require, you need 6 mana for your Hive Mind. You would need, I think it's 8 mana for Endless Swarm, which is the green epic. And then I think it's 6 mana for the red one, the red epic. So you would need 14. You would need 6 and 4. You'd need 20 mana at the end of that player's turn. If you could play all of that at instant speed, you would need 20 mana at the end of that player's turn. And for your opponents to not counter the Hive Mind. That's the important piece there, is you don't want your players countering the Hive Mind, because once the Hive Mind's in play, that's gonna turn, like, counter spells become very problematic. It's like, oh, you want to counter my spell, but do you want to give me a counter? Because depending on how the turn order is, I might get to keep what you're trying to counter, because everybody else will get a copy, and they name targets, and then we resolve in reverse order. But yeah, that's just my little bit on that. Yeah, the fact that they made the paradigm spells lessons, slightly, they're not as powerful as the epic spells, but they're also cheaper and better. They're cheaper, they're better, they're not as potentially explosive to the game. If you get a chance to go look up the old epic spells, just like type in MTG epic ability, and or list MTG epic ability, and it'll show you all 5. Like I said, they're expensive. The white one's 7 mana, the green one's 8. I know the black one's 6. I think the red one is also 6, but I'm not positive. And the blue one is either 7 or 9. I can't remember, but they're all like 6+. Paradigm spells are 5+, but I think the most expensive one is at 7, so it's 5, 6, and 7. Whereas the epic spells are 6, 7, 8, potentially 9. But yeah, Uncle Iroh flashing back paradigm spells for potentially free, if not 1 mana, on your turn, seems pretty good, actually. Especially if you can ramp relatively fast. Turn 1 Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, your Magic Christmas Land, whatever. Turn 2 Cultivate or Kadama's Reach. You use your land, your Soul Ring, Cultivate Kadama's Reach. You get a land and play tapped. You go find another land. You play that as your land for a turn. That gives you your land and your Arcane Signet. You could use your land and your Arcane Signet to Farseek. Go find another land that you might need. Go find your Triome, if you've got Triome. If you've got the actual Triome, not the common Triome, but the actual rare, has 3 different land type Triome that has cycling for 3 generic. And then that gives you 4 lands plus your Soul Ring plus your Arcane Signet. So that's turn 2. Turn 3, you untap. You have 4, 5, 6, 7. Play your land is 8. Iroh cost you 6. So you could, yeah, you could Iroh for 6, leaving up 2. Faithless Looting, draw 2, pitch 2. Pitch the blue paradigms. Pitch the blue paradigm spell and something else, and then with your last one, flashback the blue paradigm spell, and then that gets you your first of potentially 3 paradigm spells. Give me a second, real quick here. I want to look up the blue one. It's a copy of target creature you control. Oh, that's not bad. Not not what we were thinking. Not bad though. Yeah, because you can only play Teamer. Eh. So the blue paradigm spell says you get to have target player make a token copy of any creature you control. Um, I think that's a little weird that you'd let somebody else have a copy of a creature you control, but you know you can target yourself, obviously. Um, so on your next main phase, that's not so great because the only thing you can get is Iroh. I don't know that you want to be given you yourself can't have another Iroh because they're legendary, but I don't know that you want to be giving anybody Irohs either. You know, good old Uncle Iroh. So either the blue one or the green one. We don't want to pitch the red one first, and the reason we don't want to pitch the red one first is because if we're also playing epic spells, the red one can hit the epic spells in the deck and force you to cast an epic spell earlier than normal. We do want to play the red one, but we don't want to. We don't want to play it so early that we hit our epic spells, and nobody else gets the benefit from it. Um, another thing about Iroh, because we're playing lessons from the grave. We're trying to play lessons from our graveyard for as cheap as possible. The new Prismari dragon from Strixhaven, from the new Strixhaven pre-release set currently running, it gives all of your instants and sorceries Storm. So once we have Iroh, and then we have as many cost reducers as potentially possible, and the new Prismari dragon, every instant and sorcery spell now has Storm. So Storm is an older mechanic for all of you newer players out there that says when you cast this spell, copy this spell for every other spell cast before it during this turn. So if we're flashing stuff back from our graveyard for 0 mana or 1 mana or whatever the case is because of Iroh, that can get really, really strong with our lessons because our lessons are going to be one generic and then reduced as much as possible. So the lesson that lets you go find a basic land, put it in play tapped. You can, depending on how you stack your spells so that you can get as many copies of it as possible. Well, now all of a sudden you can filter through your deck and get all your basic lands into play. They'll be into play tapped. Don't get me wrong. They'll be into play tapped. But it thins your deck heavily depending on how many basics you're playing. But playing other things that are other lesson spells that shoot for damage, or lesson spells that just the spell itself just generates mana, and then using that mana to be able to flash back other instants and sorceries. So Iroh does Uncle Iroh does a lot of fun stuff. He's got firebending. I think it's firebending 2 or 3. I'm not 100% on that. But he says lesson spells in your graveyard have flashback for 1 generic on your turn. He also says during your turn, every instant and sorcery in your graveyard that is not a lesson has flashback equal to its mana value. So you could be playing other instants and sorceries that aren't lessons that then, while it's your turn and you have Uncle Iroh in play, also have flashback based on their mana value. So there's a good card for this color combination called Manamorphose. I don't know if it's still expensive. I know at one point it was a $20 uncommon, or maybe it was a $20. I think it might have been a $20 common. Just because it's in red green, it lets you generate 2 mana of any color combination you want, and it draws you a card. So it does. It fixes mana, which is a blue-green thing, and then draws you a card, which is a usually red-blue thing, but it's in red-green. The card itself is a red-green card. It's 2 mana to play. It generates you 2 mana. It draws you a card. Have fun with it. But you can play your rituals to build up mana, and then with the Prismari Dragon and all that other stuff in play, now you can start flashing stuff back, either very cheaply or you know free, depending on what you're flashing back because of Uncle Iroh, and just building your storm count, and then um, playing other spells that naturally have storm, because now they have two instances of storm, and then so you get like what is it? It's a bad storm spell, and the reason I say it's a bad storm spell is because I do not recommend destroying people's lands. But there's a volcanic eruption card. It's 4 red, and it naturally has storm, and it just says destroy target land, and then storm stating you copy the spell for every other spell you've cast for every other spell that has been cast this turn, and then each of those copies can choose a new target. Well, if it naturally has storm, and then the Prismari Dragon gives it storm again, when you cast it initially, it's going to storm. So you're going to make X copies based on the number of other spells that have been cast this turn besides itself. And then you're going to do that a second time for this second run for storm. And you're basically just going to kill everybody's lands. There are other storm spells that would be better. I forget the name of it, but there's a 2-mana storm spell in red that just deals 1 damage to any target, and it has storm. That is the one I would recommend playing over the volcanic eruption. We don't want to be blowing up people's lands. We don't want to be the biggest, butthole at the table and have everybody, trying to literally pick up the table and throw it at us. I'm a big advocate. I can understand destroying like Sol Ring and stuff like that, but blowing up someone's lands is a little bit different in my opinion. So I highly advocate don't blow up the actual lands. If you're gonna you really shouldn't be focusing on blowing up mana sources anyway. Unless it's the only way to prevent that player from winning. But if you have to focus a mana source, try to focus a mana source that is not a land. The only time I can say that it might be okay is if somebody has an Ashaya in play, because she makes all of the non-token creatures that player controls into lands. And so if you have to kill creatures, you unfortunately are going to technically be blowing up lands. But that's semantics. It doesn't matter. But yeah, the goal would be Iroh quickly with a cost reducer, play something that's going to draw you, force you to ditch, and then play your paradigm spells from your graveyard with flashback for free. And then later on in the game, hopefully you've got the new Prismari Dragon, and then you've just got a huge graveyard, and you go, oh, by the way, some kind of ritual spell that generates mana or gives me mana or fixes my mana from my hand, and then flash it back, and then build your ritual spells into building up your storm count to then storm your other spells that are where you need to spend the mana, and then use those to build up your storm for your actual spells that naturally have storm that now get a second run of storm. And then hopefully win that way. It's essentially an Uncle Iroh storm build, but we're trying to take additional benefit of the new Prismari Dragon, as well as we're gonna try to run the Hive Mind Endless Swarm epic spell so that we can force our opponents to not cast any spells for the remainder of the game. That's kind of a gimmicky combo. I'll be perfectly honest. A lot of newer players won't even fathom that. It's a really gimmicky combo. It requires setup. It requires no interaction, and it requires people not immediately scooping, because I've played at a table before where once everybody realized nobody had any kind of interaction and somebody got off a hive mind into an epic spell, the rest of the table scooped because they were like, okay, cool. Well, since we can't do anything, like, our decks aren't built to play around whatever epic spell it was that resolved. And since we can't play spells for the remainder of the game, we're just done. Like, we'll just pack our stuff up and go to another game at another table or leave or whatever the case is. So we don't want to be playing the epic spells that are gonna not give our opponents chances to win. Like the black epic spell is okay. It will run everything to a stalemate because it really doesn't matter. And then the white epic spell lets you search your deck for an enchantment and put it straight into play. And then the green one gives you 1/1 colorless creatures, 1/1 colorless spirit creatures specifically. They don't fly. Original Kamigawa block spirit tokens were colorless and on the ground. They did not have flying. Yeah, that was kind of a bummer, but you know, yeah, I'll try to work on a list. I've got an Uncle Iroh deck that needs some changing. I'll try to work on a list and then get the list posted to either Moxfield or Architect and try to link it into one of the comments in the video. I'm still not at a level on YouTube to be able to pin it in the bio of the video or do a pinned comment. I just have to leave it as a comment. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode of Cardboard Kitchen. Again, this podcast is about Magic the Gathering, specifically the Commander format, for all players of hopefully all ages. I know some episodes I can use some pretty vulgar language. I get riled up really easily on certain MTG related topics that really grind my gears. But hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you for sticking around. If you can, leave a thumbs up, share the video, share it with your friends, share it with whoever you know that likes to play Magic. As I've stated before in other videos, I'm still looking into editing software. At this point, I don't know, like, editing software can really help the videos. I know that. It'll help the videos. It'll help you guys, like, potentially interact or be entertained more by the videos. But as of right now, everything is kind of just raw footage. I record the video, save it, upload it, and that's about it. I still haven't found any software that fits into my budgets with any kind of tutorials. If any of you know anybody who does video editing that is willing to help me out, that does it fairly cheap. Like, I know it's time consuming. I know it can get expensive. I'm not at a point where I'm making any money, where I'm getting any kind of money from YouTube yet from these videos. I would love to be able to have enough motivation to be able to come in and do these videos every so often and get them sent to somebody who can do editing quality work for reasonable rate to then come back to me to then be uploaded. I would love to do that. If you're still here, please subscribe if you haven't. It would be fantastic. Hit the bell. If you're going to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every 3 or 4 months when I upload videos, because that's about the rate that they're going, is once every 3 to 6 months. Hopefully we'll hit some Magic sets that really excite me in the future, and I'll try to get you guys some more videos. I really want to do Commander videos over. I guess it'll have to be over the Spell Table app. I don't have I don't know if I've got 2 or 3 extra cell phones that are kind of just dead. I don't know if I could potentially set one of those up as like a little camera, but I'd have to clean out a space to be able to play right here. Um, I have a rather small desk that contains obviously my microphone, the computer, but it's also over here on the side that you can't see. Um, Most of my MTG crapola that I like go through, deck build, stuff I need to clean off, clean house, clear some space, so that I can move the camera over so that there's a better angle. Um, I don't know. I know it's not in this episode. I had a buddy of mine do a wood burning placard for Cardboard Kitchen over here on the side. It's supposed to be in every episode. It's kind of been sitting over here for a while. I need to get motivated to the point where I can move stuff around to get some of this stuff behind me down, because this is not my stuff. This is somebody else's stuff who is no longer around. So this stuff could potentially get moved. Um, I don't want to move all of it, just in case it upsets people. But I don't necessarily need all of this racing memorabilia stuff in the background. I don't necessarily need that in my videos about Magic. So it's a lot of after work or before work being motivated to come into this space and then just try to get something cleared away, cleaned away, moved, whatever the case is, so that I can get stuff set up. I would like a better lighting system. I have one light. It's right there. Because you can see there's a big old shiny glare here and like nothing here. There is a light up there, but that light, whenever we turn it on, it smells like something might be burning. So there's a wiring issue in that light that I've got to go fix first. That's a lot of info you didn't need to know, and it wasn't Magic related. So I do apologize if you've stuck around for like the last 5 minutes. I really appreciate that. Bye.